Well, hello. Um, wow, here we are. All right, the eve of this total lunar eclipse, or the day of, really, for most of us. Um, we'll talk a little bit about it, some of the themes that I think we could work with around this time, and then we also can spend a little bit of time in this video thinking again, paired with the other video for this session, thinking about Martinmas and the idea of how we can, the importance of rekindling relationship with local guardians and spirits. So let's start with the lunar eclipse. I'll go ahead and get the screen up there. Let's see. Where are we? Apologies. We'll see a little bit of a... Oop, wrong one. Here we go. Almost there. Okay, so let's animate this. All right, so here we are. We're seeing the moon has already moved into the sign of Taurus, where the total lunar eclipse is going to happen. We can see that the sun is going to be inevitably, Mercury will be Cazimi at the time of the eclipse. Let's bring it up to the exact moment of it. For me and my normal location, it's not where I am right now, but it is where I live. So yes, at 15 degrees of Taurus, we see also that Mercury is conjunct the sun, Cazimi. Venus is still there in Scorpio. The moon is quite close to the of course, to the north node, the eclipse point for this eclipse, and then also is conjunct Uranus, squaring Saturn. So again, this is kind of bringing in some of those themes which many of us are quite familiar with around the last bit of time. So I've been thinking a lot about what this can entail for us, and particularly in the themes that we're exploring in this course. I also wanted to give a sense of where the eclipse is visible, because obviously people are in different parts of the world. So I'll put this link in to the section, but this is timeanddate.com, has a really lovely eclipse section, which you can find here. And that's a great place to get all the information about the various eclipses that are ongoing and where they're visible and where they're affecting things. What we can see here is that this is, a reddening of the moon, and this reddening will be visible across fully across all the areas where the moon is high up in the sky. So that's most of North America, and then the moon is still eclipsed within these areas of the eastern seaboard of the United States and of Canada, as well as going into the Caribbean and parts of South America. And we also see over here edge of Australia, New Zealand, part of the islands, and parts of the Eurasian continent also are experiencing this eclipse. But it is occurring most directly over the Pacific Ocean. The reddening of the moon, we can see where it kind of will peak and then it fades again. Okay, so we have these two phases where the moon is starting to be eclipsed by the shadow of the earth, and then the true reddening of the moon itself. If we consider what all is here, we have the moon in Taurus, its sign of its exaltation. This eclipse is paired with the partial solar eclipse that occurred in 2 weeks ago. and it brings the other half of the complete two halves of, another lunation coming into being here. The moon itself is exalted and then goes from being in the total fullness of its light to being turned blood red. And we can think about this in some ways pairs really interestingly with the themes of Martinmas, where it is about the time where the fullness of this earthy power that is represented by the lunar exaltation of the full moon in Taurus, and the this moment which we might associate with a peak of experience. Maybe we can talk about as a peak of fertility or fecundity or power that is, the nature of the sensual material or the fleshy world, and then a sacrifice almost is made, and the blood of that is poured out. And these are really intense themes that are there, present within it. And also, because it is a North Node eclipse, we can look to the natal chart. I think there's like a mystical dimension that we can work with, which is the one I was just speaking to, the brightness of the moon being paired with the bloodying of it, like it's going from its total white face, full white face, to a blood red face, to then be, reborn again as a white, shining, bright moon. Many the stories that are there around this relate often to a wolf or a dragon or a serpent attempting to swallow the moon, and because it's it's unable to keep it swallowed, the moon always reemerges, similar with the solar eclipse. But I think also of that mystical dimension, we can think about what is of this fullness within our life that is represented by the moon, and what it means to cut that open and spill the contents of it out. We'll talk a little bit about how this relates to the themes that I think are really pertinent to Martinmas, at least the folk customs as it relates to things. But finally, this idea that there is a personal dimension that we can look at this in. We can think about the house that this is occurring within our own chart. We can think about, this releasing of something so that something can fully come back. Because we are with a North Node eclipse, and the North Node is like the current to the local space, place, time of that's created by the Earth, Sun, Moon dance. And the North Node is this inflowing current that is what is pouring in, that is of abundance and excess, that can pour in, can be, in this case, cut open and spilled out, and then return and be revived through this process. So I've been thinking a lot about how there is a way in which this reddening of the moon is almost like a form of polishing of the lunar power. In many ways, we could think about how the moon in Taurus and its exaltation is brought to such a height, and then is intensely brought down, through the reddening of the moon. But we can also think about how this motion causes some sort of refining to immediately occur within this excess that is coming in through the North Node. Similarly, how it's paired with conjunct Uranus, the suddenness, the potential for the radical or the accidental to seep in response to the solidifying, controlling power of Saturn. Equally, this way in which this moon obviously is in opposition to all that is being desired and communicated in this time of the sun's diminishing power in the north. So lots to sit with there, and I think, to simplify it, we can think of what is pouring in from the house of Taurus and any placements that it is interacting with within your own chart that is of excess, that is ready, is powerful and strong, and how we can cut that open and allow it to bleed out, and in that bleeding out, how it is reborn or polished or reformed, not maybe reformed, but refined, and then maybe sit with that and see how that dances within things. We do also have a trine coming from Neptune Jupiter, as Jupiter is recently ingressed back into Pisces. So there's, I think, a lot of interesting challenge, but also potential that is present within this intensity. It also can be a smart time to turn to deities that have the ability to bring about increase in and overcome the hardships of these intensities. So, for example, in Jyotish, turning to Ganesha as a form that is linked to the abundance and the world, and how we can ask for support there. But any deity that you associate with that really is powerfully able to bring about good fortune through abundance, I think, is one that we could turn to, or we can tangle with these maybe darker mysteries that are present within the moon's showing its full expression of its fecundity and its fertility to be bloodied and then be reborn. Turning to think about how it lays interestingly with Martinmas, you can find out more about the story of Saint Martin and its importance within many different Christian religious themes. But what has been interesting to me, looking at it from a broader perspective, is the practices that we often associate, at least I'm more familiar with the ones from the British Isles. But the idea that, the harvesting of the plant gods and goddesses that are marked by the, say we could talk about within an agricultural context of the harvesting of the king of the corn, the king of the grain, and his being cut down and brought in and basically, honored for the body that God is, and the way in which it brings us the power to sustain ourselves through these darker times. And now we have a lot of hunting going on historically, and also contemporarily, and we can scrutinize and assess those practices of hunting and how they are aligned with actual relationality or not. This is, I think, is a really good question. And similarly, the slaughter of animals that have been kept, that this is the time where they would be the most the most prepared for which ones are going to die now, so that we sustain ourselves through these darker times, and which ones are going to be kept throughout the winter months. And this idea that around Martinmas, the slaughtering of particular fowl or pig, and the allowing the blood of that animal to bleed out onto the ground as an offering to the spirits of place. So yes, we live in a time of the abundance of the animal and plant world has been subjugated to all kinds of, for lack of a better term, fucked up capitalist mechanistic processes that are really in need of our deep attention and sitting with. However, some of the deeper imagery and stories that relate to this time speak to a very different reality where human beings saw more readily themselves as not separate from the natural world, as the way in which corn, or and by that I mean grain, and the green world and also the animal world were gods within this context, and that the exchange that goes on between these different aspects of the world are ways in which things are communicated, so the spilling of blood onto the earth as being a way in which there is an exchange that is going on between the different aspects of this, and that this is a way of building relation. So in the other video, I do go a little bit more into this and talk about the relationship to the earth and the dead and to the spirits of the land, the guardians of our local places, how we can start to rekindle and reaffirm relationships with them, and equally giving an offering of sorts that is maybe appropriate to our practices now. That is, but sit with it, think about it. Martinmas is on Friday the 11th, and it's not that you have to follow doing anything exactly at that time, but it's something you can sit with, this mystery of this time, and the darker themes that are present within that. And I don't mean dark as in evil or bad. I mean dark as in they open us up to discovering a new relationship with the world around us, particularly the sensual world around us, and the way in which symbolism and equally relationship is communicated within those. So I leave you with all of that for now, and wishing you all the best. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them under the video, or you can definitely email me anytime. And I always love hearing from people and how they're responding to this work. Stay well.